The boy went down into the deep water. When Taiha was just a little boy, his family was cruelly betrayed while they were lost at sea. He couldn't stop the storm, so he swam through the wild waves to find his mom. But the moment he found her, he saw that she had already passed away. Taiha stood frozen in shock until a huge wave pulled him under, leaving him surrounded by everyone he loved, slipping away one by one. Right when he was about to drown, his grandfather, the powerful boss of the Cheongu group, grabbed him and saved him. Trembling, Taiha tried to talk about his parents, but the old man cut him off, insisting that no matter what happened, he must take revenge on them all, before handing Taiha a pen that would mark him as the true heir. Then his grandfather took off his own life jacket, gave it to Taiha, and tossed him back into the water. Days later, a gang of Italian mobsters found the boy, marking the start of a journey that would turn him into the world's deadliest killer, a cold soul seeking only revenge. A huge cargo ship sailing through the area was what caused it. A person beams with joy even though their face is hidden in the bright light. Taiha was terrified and lost after being saved. The two guards holding their rifles are shocked when they realize the little kid is still breathing. One of them starts yelling for his boss to tell him the boy is safe. When he heard a stranger speaking Italian, he realized they were both from Italy. The man kept trying to get through to his boss. Someone appears to have heard that call. As one of them grumbles about his boss showing up again, a large man steps in to ask if the little one can understand him. But Taiha notices the tattoo on the man's neck is hard to miss. So the hero realizes that the tattoo and those weapons mean the folks on that ship aren't normal. Suddenly, the leader springs from her hiding spot, startling him as she lands right in front of the boy to ask how he found her ship. Her subordinate warns that the child doesn't speak their language, so she gets annoyed and orders them to find someone who can help them talk. Taiha just stands there, watching them with a nervous heart, not sure what to do next. Much to her surprise, he speaks Italian and explains that he was on a yacht that was attacked nearby. At that moment, she wondered where such a remarkable child could have come from. He shares that he is Korean and tells how his family's ship was attacked by armed men during a storm, who killed his parents and grandfather. The leader said that after a shipwreck, he ended up finding the Cerno family ship. Confused, the boy wonders who the Cerno family really is. She bursts into laughter as an Asian child speaking Italian insists he hails from the Gulf of Aden in the Middle East. With a knife in hand, the woman admits it's shameful, yet she can't bring herself to believe it. Regina holds the blade to the boy's chest and asks if he has any reason for her not to toss him back into the sea. The boy stood frozen, not knowing what words to speak to dodge that trouble. Nervous, he scrambles to come up with something fast. Taiha holds up the pen his grandfather gave him to show he is the grandson of Cheongu Group Chairman Sayoko and the son of Siak, who is Sayoko's third son. He insists that rather than sending him back, they should help him reconnect with his people so they can both gain something from it. Regina stammers in shock, asking if he's for real, since that family owns South Korea's biggest company and the kid is part of it. So the boss tells her team to look up the news about Korea. As both of them search for what the boy mentioned, the woman asks if the child knows any other languages. He tells her he knows enough Cantonese, English, Japanese, Arabic, Spanish, Hindi, and Esperanto to hold a simple chat in any of them. One of the men reports that he has found news from Korea. Regina smiles, feeling how truly amazing this all is. She told the boy that if he wants to reach someone in Korea, he should just ask. But the boy kept his grandfather's words in mind, remembering that Lawyer Kim would know just how to help him. He tells her he needs her to reach out to someone who isn't part of his family. In the city of Seoul, at 1:12 a.m., someone picks up the phone to ask who is calling. The caller speaks from overseas, insists on using only English, and asks to speak with Lawyer Kim. Regina tells him that the lawyer saw her grandson in her photo and is asking if she should send him back to Korea, so the old man asks what she means by that. She offers him $10 million and tells him to meet her at the Panama Canal to swap the money. But the guy says he's too busy to bargain, so he tosses a counteroffer of $1 million out there instead. He leaves his drink on the table, grabs a nearby microphone, and swears that it will be worth $1 million. As he danced with the crowd, the crazy man offered $1 million to anyone who would kill Taiha. He commands the woman to kill the boy and send a video proof within 5 minutes, promising her $1 million reward. Regina asked what would happen if he didn't send the money after the job. As all eyes are on him, the lawyer promises he only needs to tap his phone 3 times to send that tiny amount. Kim warns that if she doesn't act, he'll tell the press that they're the ones who carried out the attacks. He hung up the phone and told his master not to worry, since he had already called in some mercenaries to help them out. Thanks to this, the Cheongu group is finally all theirs. The boy stood frozen, unable to move, even though he had just heard everything. Since that man wants him dead in 5 minutes, he's terrified, and now the woman says her reason for keeping him alive is gone. Terrified, Taiha starts begging them not to kill him. Regina says he's no longer from a wealthy family, and they're probably already getting ready to bury him. She wonders if the boy understands that in her world, people often kill others just to take what they have worked for. Terrified, he complains that his uncles and family are plotting to kill them all. Two guards whisper to each other that their boss won't kill him, but she's having a blast teasing him. Shaking with fear, he can't believe he made it out of the ocean only to face death from strangers. He wondered what Changgu meant and if it was truly worth killing his parents and grandfather just for the positions they held. Just then, a stranger burst in shouting that they were being attacked. The guy warns them that 3 patrol ships and a heavily armed military helicopter have just shown up. She asks if they are Interpol, but the man shakes his head and explains that they are completely ignoring their radio calls. Regina is confused by what's going on because she can't believe anyone would be crazy enough to do that. As she stared at the child, she finally figured out who did it, knowing those Koreans must have reached out to someone to find the boy. Suddenly, Taiha plunges his pen right into his own hand. Nobody knows what that little one is trying to do. He tells her that the Changa group will never give her the money. Plus, the woman stands to lose everything if she kills him, and even the Salerno family's leader is shocked by how smart the boy is thinking. He begged her to take him in, promising to stay by her side forever if she helped him get revenge. She asks herself how he came to know the secret Cerno mark. The crazy woman starts laughing so hard she can't stop. Regina is buzzing with energy and shouts for Matteo to get ready so they can kick off the show. Before she goes, she checks to see if he really gets how heavy those words are. He wonders if he is ready to take revenge, even if it means getting his hands dirty with blood. He remembered his grandfather's warning that he must take over Changgu by any means necessary. With a nod, the hero showed he was ready to move forward. She smiled and told us that barking dogs rarely bite, but watching them was still fascinating. A wild woman kicks the door open, begging them to follow her and declare that the boy's life now belongs to the Cerno family, meaning he must live and die for them. So he has to watch closely because that's how his future is made. Taiha stands there, stunned by what she has just seen. And so, 17 years go by before he finally makes his way back to Korea. The boy begged his parents to stand guard while he went out to take his revenge. But then he looks taken aback by something. He spun around fast to take a look behind him. He springs aside just as a barrage of bullets pummels the spot he was in. A few soldiers rush to the scene and open fire on Taiha with many shots. Stepping away from the vehicles, someone wonders if those insects don't even know how to aim. The security guard and manager for the Changa group tell them to find the senior administrative director, saying they don't know the man, but he's a madman for thinking he could kidnap Director Cha Yong-gu. A team member runs to the boss and shouts that they've finally spotted the car they were hunting for. He tells everyone to open the trunk slowly because the director is still alive. Just as he tells them to look at his injuries, a huge explosion goes off. The guy gets furious at the nerve of putting a bomb there. But suddenly, half of his men's heads were cut off, and when he turned around to see the rest of them dead in an instant, he realized Taiha had wiped them all out in moments. He spots a small cut on his waist. Nervous, he realizes that the protective vests are what saved him. The bald man tries to attack the protagonist, sneering that he's just a tiny bug. But the boy warns him not to think he's the only one who can speak, then quickly slashes the opponent's back, cutting him in half with a sudden attack. As he falls, Jinong stares in shock, trying to figure out what just happened and how it could be so powerful. He kept talking about who the monster really was. But on the other side, the main character didn't look happy about it at all. As he walks away, he starts cleaning his daggers and heads toward a fancy car to grab a bag from the back seat. So he heads straight for the trunk. Squirming with fear, the director begs Taiha to let him go and claims he was just following orders from the former lawyer, Kim, who ordered his death and insists there was no reason to kill the chairman. But the boy opens the bag, tosses a handful of bills over the man, and shouts that these are the $1 million since it was never meant for him, leaving the terrified guy confused as he asks about the money Taiha is talking about. But the director still remembers that day. The hero reaches into his coat for a lighter, noting that he owes his very existence to the day he died. As he tossed the lighter into the air, he whispered that he had found his new life. Kim starts to burn right up. Taiha stood there with a cold look, watching everything happen without caring at all. Then he calmly picks something up. As he puts a cigar in his mouth, the protagonist silently asks his parents and grandfather for forgiveness for taking so long, hoping they will stop worrying and find peace while promising to carry their pain from this day forward. After a while, a modern building stood out in the middle of the city. The hero surged forward, driven by a fierce need to take action. Some men asked where he thought he was going and got ready to shoot to stop him. But the madman just snaps and kills them both in a flash. Even so, Taiha didn't let the surprise rattle him and just kept walking down the hall like nothing happened. Seeing what was happening, a man sat on the floor, shaking with fear. Frightened, he asks the hero who sent him there. The guy claims they work for the Cheongu group and warns that Taiha will be in danger after everything he's done. As he wipes down his blade, Taiha explains that this is Holdings, a private security firm working under Cheongu. Their main job is to keep the directors and board members safe from trouble outside of work hours in the gangbook area. While they rest, they quietly hunt down journalists and anyone who has spoken out about Cheongu. Then they kidnap and beat them, sometimes even killing them, acting as hired killers. The captives were broken and begged for mercy. The hero casually tosses a dagger to the old man. After that, he asks everyone to use his power to set themselves free and promises they will never see him again. So, the bond snapped, leaving the three of them still dizzy from the chaos. The old man rises and hands the knife back to the boy. While they run away giving thanks, the company member shouts for everyone to return. As one runaway hears a man complaining, he glances back over his shoulder. The large man didn't know who he was and asked if Taha was family. Taking off his mask, the boy shakes his head and says he just needed to talk in private. He insists on getting the schedules for everyone on the board, from the directors all the way up to the chairman. The guy claims he has no idea, and even if he did, he'd never speak up because doing so would get him and his family killed. The protagonist says the man values his life too much, so he'll start by taking his eye, and the man should raise his hand as soon as he's ready. Outside, a giant screen on a building flashed news about a famous star. On the other hand, a few folks sat on the stairs, having lost their homes. The heat was so intense that a dead cicada lay on the ground, its stillness broken by someone rushing past. As Taiha walks, he realizes a cigar is too loud and starts wondering if he should try Korean cigarettes instead. The street was packed with people at that time of day. He says he's finally back in Korea and things look normal, but he notices the country is going crazy with credit and insurance ads everywhere. The politician told the crowd he'd use his power to wipe out the scary epidemic of crime and violence. He promised that starting that very day, his fight against crime would be announced to the whole world. Just as he speaks, a gun is suddenly pointed straight at him. It said that back in 1990, the president was killed while leading the fight against organized crime. Since then, no one has stopped crime rings from turning the whole country into a violent, money-driven mess. The boy wandered through the crowded streets with his head down in thought, while far away, the Chonga group joined forces with criminals to buy the news and shut down their rivals. They poured money into fun and games until people stopped caring about politics so much that even a dog could run for office. Despite everything, folks still talked about the Cheongu Group as a company that truly did good for people. Taiha walked into the shop with a steady calmness. The clerk greets him, and, right along with another young guy, he asks for a pack of this. They stand there for a second, puzzled by how this strange coincidence could have happened. Frustrated, the main character decides to pick a different path. But they both share the same thought and want to be counted at the exact same moment. They lock eyes once more, each one watching the other with deep suspicion. In an awkward moment, she admitted with a sigh that they only had one pack left. Ty let out a deep sigh, showing just how annoyed he was by what had happened. He steps back and tells her to hand that pack to the other man, saying he'll be okay without it. The man kept staring at the boy even after the kid walked away. Once the man finishes buying his item, he steps outside and finds the protagonist waiting politely to ask for a cigarette. But the man suggests trying another convenience store, while Taha explains that since it's been so long since he was in Korea, he just wants to grab a quick bite. He stops trying to escape him. As he passes a cigarette, he shakes his head and says he can't believe anyone would want to try such a tasteless thing. As they walk, the man warns that smoking there will get him a fine, so he suggests they wait until they reach the proper smoking area. Seeing this, Taiha admits that after 17 years in the mafia, a single glance is all it takes to judge anyone. He wonders if the kind of strong fighters he met abroad are common in Korea. As he walks away, the protagonist says he doesn't want to ever see that person again. After a while, that same man showed up at the spot where the hero had caused the slaughter. As he takes a drag, he watches one of the bodies with a calm expression. Crouching low, the man peers closely at the dead bodies. He realizes that everyone was stabbed to death with a long, sharp blade, just like a sashimi knife. He stashed his cigarette in a pool of blood, grabbed his phone, and called his boss. His master scolds him for calling at the wrong time, so the man suggests the guy just cancel their meeting since there's no good reason to meet up now. After all, the killer director Kim might be hunting for him. The man sipping his wine calmly asked what's going on. His subordinate told the story of how he found the security team dead at the company, with their wounds showing they were taken out one by one in a solo attack. Given that this assassin isn't just any ordinary man, it's quite possible he already knows exactly where the meeting is taking place. But his master reminds him that gathering the family to face any emergency is just a custom of the Cheongu group. Doubting whether his subordinate truly believes anyone could break into a meeting known only to family, he explains that he sent him specifically to hunt that man without anyone else knowing. Staring into his own thoughts, he suddenly sees that the knife wounds bring back a painful memory. He recalls the protagonist asking for a cigarette, and when the protagonist reaches out with his scarred hands, he insists that without using knives, those deep marks on his palms could never have happened. Thinking hard, Man asks his master if anyone in his family is good at using a knife. Laughing, he jokes that those folks can't even slice an apple, and he notes that everyone is there except the kids. So he promises Hyun another 100 million to watch over and keep the place safe. Then he heads out of the office to meet with the team. Even then, he asks for more guards to keep him safe. Frustrated, his master just grumbles that he gets it. He passed his phone to another worker and explained that the crazy guy is just a gangster who still thinks he's in charge. As he walked down the hall, he fixed his clothes and got ready for the meeting. When he got to the meeting, he shook his boss's hand and asked when the chairman had showed up. While on the phone, Weeman tells his gang leader that he will help the Changa group for one more day before heading back. Even though they call him a traitor, he doesn't get angry. Instead, he calmly asks his boss if he's been drinking. He tells him they offered another 100 million for the service and that only a fool would turn it down. But there's a dangerous assassin out there who spots the hero hiding in the alley. Women quickly ends the talk, telling him he can share the rest later, and then turns her gaze to the boy. Feigning innocence, he asks if one cigarette was too many. Taiha insists that finding such a capable person right at the crash site wasn't a coincidence, and she's glad she followed him. The man grinned and said it had been quite a day, starting when they snatched his cigarette and ended with them following him right behind. He admits he couldn't believe he missed him, marking the first time something like this ever happened. As he stepped closer, the protagonist stopped to ask a final question. Before we begin, are you working with the Cheongu group? Man asks if he wasn't listening to the conversation, claiming he's just helping them out for now. At that moment, the boy turns his eyes into a deadly glare. Reaching for the two daggers at his back, he quickly clashes his blade against the enemy's weapon. They exchange glances, carefully judging each other's talent. So a wild back and forth of punches suddenly kicks off. Man jumps over the hero, landing on top of him. He swings his gear to send a strike flying. To his shock, his bat suddenly snapped into many pieces. The gangster notices the change and wonders when it all went wrong. Suddenly, Taiha vanished from sight in the blink of an eye. But his opponent starts to get nervous when he realizes something is wrong. The roles flipped, leaving the hero in the air racing to end the fight with a growing fear, while Hwan admits the Chongu are in deep trouble, wondering how they ended up as prey for such a terrifying monster. Taiha charges at his enemy, slashing with his blades. The gangster stands frozen, not knowing what to do now that he's been left without his weapon. With one last strike to send the man down, the protagonist wipes blood from his blade, slips out of the alley, and leaves Humyan's body lying there. Surprisingly, the wounded man asks if the boy is joking, insisting that even though he's hurt, he's still alive and won't just let him walk away without regretting it later. After sheathing his dagger, Taha says he has his own rules and warns that if he were with the Changa group, he'd already be dead. He warns the man to stay out of his way, or next time he helps his enemies, he won't be so nice. If he can't accept that he was spared, he could just see it as payment for the cigarette. Lying on the ground, Man grinned with relief, admitting that this simple cigarette had saved his life at a bargain price. Soon after, a car speeds down the street. It was clear from the start that the person behind the wheel was the main character. For some reason, he looked like he was in pain and had a bad mood. Taiha looks at the cut near his waist and says, "At least the blow didn't go deep." As he drove, he muttered that he could still move, so he pressed on, hoping to reach his goal in just 32 minutes. He whispers that after waiting 17 years, his revenge will finally come true just 32 minutes before the story ends. Once more, the boy is swept away by memories of his childhood. His mother pleaded with him not to look while his father stood tall between them, taking the bullets so they wouldn't get hurt. But with fear and worry gripping his heart, he sprints toward his father. The man asks what she is doing, begging his wife to take the boy and run away. So his mother grabs Taiha and pulls her toward the door to escape. Suddenly, the ship starts thrashing around wildly. Even the deadly assassins are fighting hard just to keep from falling over. His mother steps the boy outside the door. She screams at her son to grab a life vest and throw himself into the water. Zhang smiles and says he has to keep going to live. One of the men complains that it's a nuisance and reminds us he gave the order to blow everything up only after all the targets were dead. As he looks at them, the protagonist is shocked to realize the killers speak Korean. The man wore a mask and goggles as he pointed straight at his mother and the person standing next to her. Zhang panics and screams at Taiha to run for her life. The boy starts sprinting frantically across the boat. The child wasn't just surprised, but genuinely terrified. He sprinted away, breathless and sobbing, unable to stop the tears. The first blast had already set part of the yacht on fire, but then another bomb went off. Because of this, the ship starts to sink even faster, pulling us back to the present day inside the secret annex of Gangbook. The CEO of Cheonggu Group Department Store asks if they have finally found the man who killed Director Kim. Jashong thinks it was a crime of passion, since the director had 2 secret lovers. His sister calls it disgusting, but the guy points out the irony, since she's the one with multiple affairs. Jongwon asks how much stock Director Kim owns, saying he'll have to tell everyone soon. Suddenly, a hand slams down on the table and snatches everyone's focus. The man commands everyone to keep quiet. Goho calls out to his son and asks him to speak up. Chang reports that 2 workers were discovered at the scene. But since they had nothing more to share and were left behind, plus there were no other witnesses around, the matter was settled. The man claimed they were just subcontractors who knew very little, and the police promised that no one would ever learn about what happened. Right then, his father hurls a wine glass straight at his head. Everyone at the table was left scratching their heads, not sure what had just gone down. The old man asked where the own gang is hiding. Chang's face showed he was really angry about that. Even so, the man cracks a grin and says they don't seem to know anything, having even sent Huim, the 7th in command. But the crazy man smashes a bottle over his son's head. The old man admitted that after a whole day, he still didn't know who the killer was or where he hid, so he turned in a gang instead. He insists that if the old chairman and Su Yak had lived, a man as useless as him would never have been allowed inside. Not only was there wine, but the man's face was also splattered all over with blood. No matter what happens, Chong is determined to track him down within the next 12 hours. The whole family notices that neither of them has changed, and it upsets everyone. Jui wonders why he treats his oldest son so harshly, but her brother explains it's not because he hates him. He insists that it must be out of fear. Chong quickly grabs a cloth and demands his phone from his subordinate. As he wipes his face, he spots something on his phone. He wonders where his men are, only for his assistant to tell him they are already ready. The crazy man calls it exciting because he can't wait to see how huge the entrance will look. Late at night, the hero pushed onward down the dark road, driven only by his destination. Taiha admits that 17 years ago, right before his grandfather's funeral, and just as Goho became the new chairman by grabbing all the shares while the city was in chaos, he had already been watching the Chang'e group closely even as Goho made deals with gangs like the Ong to grow his power. Even though this marked the start of the Cheon era, they still gather with the official members whenever times like this call for it. This was an old family tradition that had started back when his grandfather was still alive. The system and the old ways stayed exactly the same, with everyone killing each other, including their own parents and Siyoko himself, to climb the dangerous ladder he had built. One security guard watched the cameras, guessing whose car was coming. So he questions his boss if a guest is expected, but the answer is a flat no. He warns him that a car is speeding straight for the front gates and isn't slowing down at all. The security chief raises the pillars when he realizes a crazy man is about to attack. Suddenly, balls of containment start shooting up from the ground, but the hero pushes faster than ever before. After all, he doesn't need any tricks to take down people who've never faced real danger. Taiha unbuckled his belt and declared that drawing up complex plans was a waste of time. The crash smashed the front of his car into pieces. Even so, he springs forward with his blade drawn, daring them to admit they haven't forgotten his family, so he can shout it from the rooftops, leaving the security guards staring at him in stunned silence. The boy takes them all down in one quick strike and shouts that he is back. Confused, they asked what that loud noise was and wondered why it kept getting louder. Also, it looks like the sound is coming from the front gate. While the others were lost, Chang looked puzzled, yet sure of himself. His uncle points the guy toward the source of the noise and tells him to figure out what's going on. To Jongwon's surprise, he says there's no need for it. Every guard in the hall raises their weapon to aim at the family. The oldest sister wonders what's going on. Goho, clearly annoyed, asks if they really want to just play around when things are this serious. But his son rises quietly, calmly wiping his mouth. The old man wonders if he will actually go through with it. Chong just smiles and says his dad knew this would happen sooner or later. That's why his dad was always mad at him, terrified he'd end up just like his grandfather. The madman's terrifying face twists as he whispers that he, not anyone else, is the one who killed his grandfather and uncle. Meanwhile, the hero walked through the gates, declaring that his revenge was finally starting. The guards aim their guns, wondering if they've walked right into a trap. Zhang wonders if his nephew has truly lost his mind. They wonder why the guy is doing this, saying he should never aim a weapon at his own family. But Chang insists he's not doing anything at all. Even so, they keep shouting insults at him, convinced they've already made their point. Jui looks at a guard and wonders if he'll really turn on them just for that kid. Even though he is her personal bodyguard, a group of young men apologize to him, showing that he is walking away from her. Even the second son's own bodyguard admits the betrayal wasn't personal because the rewards were just too tempting to resist. On the other hand, one of them argues that if they'd just gotten a raise, none of this would have happened. Only Chang's own bodyguard stays quiet. The guy's dad says he can forgive the others for turning on him, but he still can't figure out why his own son did it. He wonders if his guard will truly turn his back on them. Jun-soo just stood there, frozen in silence, watching everything unfold without saying a word. The man says he's not hired to guard the father, but to watch over the Chang'e group. Jongwon wonders aloud if the guards truly believe they'll get anything out of this. He keeps trying to threaten them, but a cold steel barrel is pressed hard against his own head. His personal protector suddenly stabbed him down without any mercy. So the two last siblings, now in a panic, beg for their lives. But gunshots boom down the hallway while blood sprays. So Chang calmly tosses a rag to his man and steps toward his father. The old man admits he knew this day would come ever since his other son died of leukemia and his wife walked out without even saying goodbye. Shaking with anger, he admits he always suspected Chang was pulling the strings, which is why he kept his distance. As the gun spins, the guy warns Goho that talking so much is a big mistake for someone who ordered the deaths of his own father and brother. With the gun pressed against his head, the man asks the old man who sent his own father and brother out to sea. He wonders if there was anything else he could have done, because if he hadn't killed everyone, Suyaka-san would have taken the presidency and they never would have ended up here. The psychopath stepped up and asked why his dad never named him the next boss. The old man grew more scared by the moment, as everything around him got worse. And besides, his son was giving him a terrifying stare, with Gua insisting that if he'd done that, the boy would have killed him a long time ago. He admits he would have killed him sooner, but he's upset that his father thinks even doing it this way won't stop the guy from becoming president. But Chang cuts him off, saying he already knows. In the end, the committee decided that any power taken by force or bloodshed simply doesn't count. Right then, the guy sighs and admits it's a real shame. He tells the president that the noisy stranger isn't one of their own, so the leader wonders who it could be. As he fired the gun at his father, he shouted that a young master had waited a long 17 years for this very moment. The guards opened fire on the intruder. Since the assassin had no gun, they tried to circle around him. The hero recalls that the core security team is made up of the people who guard the executives, which means they hold top positions. So he assumes the new bodyguards will be much stronger than the ones before. He pauses his run to shift his path, and the boy insists this change won't matter. He weaves in a zigzag dance past the gunfire, using a guard's body as a shield while pleading not to be shot. But the guards don't care and just fire anyway, leaving one of them terrified as his weapon snaps in half. In a flash, Taiha takes down everyone. The leader orders his men to rush the president out of there right now. But the protagonist hurls his dagger right at that guy. The guard manages to catch the knife right before it hits him. A guy with glasses asked why everyone was making so much noise and if they couldn't just do it quietly. 3 bosses stepped forward to stop him, but he pays them no mind and cuts down the rest. One of them stepped forward, saying he could take him on alone, and asked his friends to wait. Even though Taiha is super strong, that old wound is getting worse by the minute. Suddenly snapping back to reality, he sees his opponent's fist is already inches from his face. So he has no choice but to stop the attack while getting pushed back. He manages to regain his balance, but then a shadow rises up from above him. The man asked how he could dare to attack that place and then get distracted while trying to invade his territory. Though he agrees that wounds won't distract him, he drives his blade straight through the man's chest. This sudden defeat startles his friends. Taiha quickly hurls his last dagger at the 2 remaining enemies. They weren't feeling quite as sure of themselves as they had at the start. It was a shock when the sneak managed to hit the defender who had been keeping his distance. Chilho struggles to keep his eyes on the target, his hands moving fast to grab one of the knives the other person had just thrown. The hero grabs an axe and chops off the head of the final department boss. Thanks to that, he had taken down every security guard standing outside. As he walks toward the entrance, he spots his second dagger. He lifts it with steady hands, acting like no one else is even watching. As he wipes away the blood, he realizes he has taken longer than he expected. Even so, the place feels strangely quiet. The boy wonders if the others found a hidden way out he missed, so he steps inside the house to see what surprises await him. Finally arriving in the room where everyone was dead, only Chang sat among the blood, waiting for him. He also cheers him on for getting this far, and asks if he wants to sit down to catch his breath and rest. Even the main character can't quite figure out what's going on after seeing all that. Looking at Jashong's body with a bullet hole in his forehead, along with his Aunt Jui, even Jong-won had met the same end. The president who was in charge had already passed away. As he stands up, his cousin remarks that he looks better than expected and jokes that modern assassins must take great care of themselves. Chang greets him with respect and asks if he knows who he is. On the other hand, the protagonist only tells the man his name and that he is Gui's eldest son. Laughing, the madman claims he can't remember when he got so bold that he started calling his father by his first name. Taiha, feeling something was off, just watches the strange stuff going on. His cousin explains that he stayed because he felt it was rude not to say hello, and he needs to tell the other guy that they can just stand around if sitting isn't an option since it won't take long. Chong wonders if the boy still remembers that day 17 years ago when the Italian mafia saved him. His bodyguard cut them off, shouting that the helicopter is ready and they have to go now because it's too dangerous. Feeling annoyed, the guy warns her to only call him once he's finished talking. However, Taiha is suddenly startled, clearly not expecting it, and he realizes that voice belongs to the man who killed his family 17 years ago. He remembered the man who had pointed a rifle at him and his mother, the very same man who had laughed beneath his mask while complaining about the early explosions. Tai, furious, demanded to know if the man had truly been that worm. The madman tries to hold back his laugh, admits he has nothing left to say, and tells the protagonist to stop acting so casually because it's making him want to kill him. He charges ahead, telling the guy to keep trying because his goal from the start was to wipe out the whole family. His cousin tells him that in Korea, he has to sound like a Korean, so he orders him to stop talking that way. Taiha, feeling annoyed, starts to dig deeper to figure out exactly what is going on. He realizes Chang knows he survived 17 years ago and that he is a Salerno assassin. He can't understand why Chang held off on his coup until Chang came back 17 years after the event happened. The guy tries to get the boy's attention, asking him to really listen because he is about to start. Only then does Taiha realize that the madman isn't after a coup at all. He tries to blame Taiha for the attack, saying Taiha let it so Chang could win the presidency. Junyak tells the young master there's no need for any introductions at all. The boy holds his dagger out, but the bodyguard immediately opens fire. But the assassin dodges every single bullet. He slashes with his blade to bend the path of the incoming shots and quickly rushes forward to close the gap. But then, another guard swings and hits the boy hard. Even though he knew more blows were coming, he couldn't guess exactly where the next one would land. While the others stayed silent, a man stepped forward to introduce himself as Juno Park. To avoid getting trapped, the young master steps back fast until he stands right in front of his enemies. Youngui fires back without delay, proving he's faster than people say and boasting that he'd rule the track and field if he became a pro. His partner steps in and cuts off the hero's only way out. Even Taiha starts to feel a little nervous about what's happening. Juno wonders if being flexible is the real reason the young master succeeds. She unleashed a breathless series of blows in a frantic rush. Taiha realizes they are powerful, totally unlike anyone he has met outside. But if that wound hadn't happened, he could have walked right up to them without any trouble. Seeing Chang relax, he knows this is his last moment to strike before the guard Jun Su shows up. If the woman next to him is that means 3 guards are guarding them, yet 4 people were supposed to be at the meeting. Suddenly, his thoughts are cut short as Juno steps forward to strike. Taiha spots the 4th guard by catching his reflection in the enemy's eyes. Young Min gripped his sword, ready to strike him from behind. To their shock, he simply vanishes from right between them. They can't figure out how that could ever happen. Kneeling on the floor, the hero knows this has to be the very last one. The guy grumbles about his reflection and blames Juno, but his friend snaps back that if it were easy, the boy would be dead already. As they reload their weapons, Janie whispers that he can barely imagine the bonus they'll get if they kill that guy. So, both he and the Guardian Glasses fired their weapons at the assassin. Chang shakes his head and says that keeping up with a mix of shooting and fighting is hard. He warns that they were trained to beat him, since rumors of his impossible speed had already spread through Interpol. He admitted that killing him with a bomb crossed his mind, but he decided that dying in a battle would make his story much more famous. Juno steps in front of the boy to stop him from running away. Junie claims that his speed makes no difference. Now that Taiha is trapped, everything is finally coming to an end. With that, the guard grabs his brass knuckles and swings to hit someone. The hero had nothing to do but watch the attack heading right for him. His cousin gave him a wicked smile as she thanked him for the show. His enemy's punch knocked him hard into the wall, cracking it all the way through. Suddenly, for years ago, Regina was yelling at him for using the traitor as paint on the walls instead of taking care of him as she had ordered. She couldn't hold back her stomach at the sight of that scene. While they were still arguing, the woman pointed out that with his amazing speed, he could have done it without making a sound. She remembers the day they saved him and says she sees his anger, knowing Lorenzo treated him kindly, but she fears that killing someone like him will only push people to seek revenge. So, as the Cerno family's guide and voice, Regina tells the boy not to make that mistake ever again. Yet the hero didn't look happy or sorry about it. Even so, he claims that no one will ever find out, leaving her confused as she asks what Taiha means. He says that killing traitors without a show would mean their deaths teach no one a lesson. Make sure everyone fears the scary, twisted rumors about what happens to those who betray the family. If we do this, fewer traitors will slip through, and we won't be stuck in an endless fight forever. She asks if he chose a violent end to save more lives from bleeding. Leaving where he stood, he saw that everything around him was covered in blood. She calls it ridiculous that such a thing could come from a boy standing in a river of blood with not a single drop on his face. Regina cuts herself off mid-thought to say that being an assassin doesn't seem to fit him at all. John-Ho suddenly freezes as a bright light starts glowing right in the center of his chest. As that eerie light keeps pulsing, the man starts to cough up blood. Even Chong and his female bodyguard are taken aback by what they see. The protagonist hacked the man apart with savage blows. He gives a dark, angry look and stares down his other enemies. Filled with terror, Youngmin quickly raises his weapon, but before he can act, a spear slices through his eye. After getting hit, the guy realized they had underestimated that man, who turns out to be not only fast, but also incredibly strong. And anyone who truly saw what he could do never lived to tell the tale. Even though he still had plenty of fight left in him, Taiha was bleeding out and his wounds were getting worse. Junyuk was in panic because nobody had realized how strong he really was. Suddenly, Junsu shows up and asks the woman to lead the master outside, promising he will be right behind them. Seeing that his cousin is trying to leave, the boy is surprised. He shouts loudly, calling out to the man. He slices through both of Juni's weapons and sprints straight for the elevator. Chong pushes his head out to peek at the chaos. With a fury he couldn't control, Taiha shouts at him to stop thinking he's safe, reminding him the battle isn't over yet. But Junsu was standing guard at the entrance, smiling warmly to welcome the young master. He is shocked to see the president's guard arrive, yet the boy jumps in to push him aside, only for the guard to calmly stop both knives with just one hand. As the old man winds up for a punch, he notices the boy has grown so much that he admits he is truly impressed. With that, the man strikes the protagonist repeatedly, shattering almost every rib until Taiha spits blood, breaks the blades with his bare hand, and Junu declares it over by landing a knee strike in the same spot to hurl the assassin's body far away. But the old man is shocked to find that his clothes have been sliced. The man looks at his subordinate and tells Juni to get up, insisting he knows she's okay. Nervous, he admitted he felt like it was all over. The old man shouts that the building is about to blow, telling him to grab his friend and run. The protagonist lay on the ground, looking dead. Once the president's bodyguard reached the rooftop, he made his way straight to the helicopter. Chang wonders if the job is done, and the man confirms it, promising to blow up the building the moment they take off. Junsu says he'll get ready to fly, but the other guy just tells him to keep the door open and get them airborne. As he slips on the headset, his guard warns that the helicopter ride will be chaotic and suggests they shut their eyes to keep their minds focused. But the psychopath insists he must watch it, saying he has waited a long time for this exact moment. With that, the helicopter lifts off while Chang stands guard right at the open door. He watches with a calm smile, swearing he always hated that house. While the man grumbles about his family's annoying hypocrisy, Dean and Junsu just stare at each other. Suddenly, the madman snaps back to the moment the hero told him their fight wasn't over yet. With a smile, he calls him a poor child, reminding him that he sought revenge only to end up meeting the same fate. He asks if they both knew that the word family actually comes from the Latin word for slave. He grabs the detonator and asks everyone to watch as he turns Cheongo upside down by blowing up the mansion where those secret meetings took place. Inside, Taiha lay on the floor out cold. Still feeling dizzy, he hears the helicopter blades and knows the whole thing is finished. Suddenly, he decides to change his mind and shouts that he's not too late. Meanwhile, Chang watches the place explode. After tossing the detonator down, the guy says they've made a real splash. As the hero jumps through the fire, the crazy leader says he'll take a break from the heat and orders his men to head straight to headquarters. Taiha slashes at him with his knife, but it only cuts his calf. His cousin suddenly lets out a loud, painful scream. The two guards jump to their feet, scared by the noise. Frustrated, his cousin snaps, "You bug, what are you doing?" The protagonist wondered if he truly thought he could run away after tearing apart so many families. Because he's hanging from a knife, his body weight drives it deeper into Chaeyoung's leg as blood sprays out, and Taiha vows to kill him no matter what it takes. Diane snatched her weapon and begged her master to step back. But the madman grabs the pistol and says he'll do it himself. Chang points the gun at his cousin and asks if he really thinks he is the hero of that story. He insists he is the only one who matters, labels the boy a useless outcast, and tells him to die. As Taiha tumbles through the air, he narrowly dodges the deadly shots aimed at him, though he still lands a few stray hits on his body. And just like that, he plunges into a wild free fall. As soon as they slam the helicopter door shut, his bodyguard rushes to the hospital to tell them an emergency is coming. The main character was tumbling down from a crazy, impossible height. Luckily, he smashes into a tree and slows down. He still crashes into the side of a house, tumbles onto a truck, and rolls all the way to a stream. A cyclist riding by just happened to see the scene. She stops and turns to look right at him. It was one of the people he'd rescued from the security company earlier. The young man realizes this is the very man who saved his life. Looking at his body, the guy wonders if he's come too late, but then he hears someone crying for help. He turns back to Taiha to look closer, seeing that she is barely staying awake as she asks for help. Even hurt beyond belief, he kept shouting that the fight wasn't done and begged for aid. Someone sent an 11-minute voice note in the messaging app. One person asked for help, saying the man had turned down the breathalyzer test 3 times and claimed he was Congressman Kim. A man scribbled notes while listening to the ex-director Kim, who was using his power to threaten the cops. He asks if the voice and name are clear enough. The person asks where the director is right now, and the young man says he's probably giving a statement at the station and will be going home soon. His friend looks a little unsure. So, the guy offers 200 and asks if that's enough to take down a big boss from the other side. For a while, all he heard was the sound of typing, but to his shock, the counteroffer was just 30. He gets so mad he insists the thing is worth way more than that. But the buyer argues that since it's not election season, nobody really cares about those old men anymore. The guy told the buyer he doesn't get the market, saying normal folks pay one price, but celebrities pay 10 times as much. But if that person is connected to Changgu, the value jumps to 1,000 times as much. He takes a deep breath and sees that everything in this world turns on Cheonggu. Eventually, the radio announced that something had gone wrong at the tower. The guy shrugs off the info and switches the device off. He was getting ready to go. But instead of being out on the street, he was sitting inside a restaurant. The boss was already getting ready to kick off the day. The woman tells the young boy he'll be too late if he doesn't leave right now. The boy says he's okay and promises to make it on time if he rides a skateboard. So she tells him to eat, but warns that if he does, he'll be late. Suddenly, someone popped up and told the boss it was time to stop playing around. A man walked in and said the owner needs to sell the place before things stop being polite. Baksu turns to the young man and asks if he truly disagrees with him. The lady asks if they're already there first thing in the morning to collect money, noting that people who owe debts certainly know how to keep themselves busy. The woman tells the irritated boy not to worry and to go to school, knowing that nothing will change anyway since there is nothing he can do about it. The madman grabs a knife and warns her not to speak so rashly, insisting that they are already 2 months behind. The man tells the woman to sell the building and take every penny she can, because making money for him is just like making money for her. She refuses to sell the place for so little and tells him to learn some math before he comes back. Meanwhile, the kid was standing at the station, waiting for his ride to come. Tired from everything, he lets out a long sigh, completely lost on what to do next. He admits that fights over rebuilding his neighborhood are happening all over the place, with groups like the Changgu and Ong fighting over their land. This place has been left forgotten by everyone. Now it's a wild place where tiny gangs prey on the folks who call home. People like him and that lady have nowhere else to go. When she came back, her face was bruised, yet she just asked him to wipe down the tables. He looks worried and asks her what happened to her face. One angry customer claimed that men from Yaburi left earlier, probably trying to force locals to sell their buildings for redevelopment. She tells him not to worry and asks the brat to put his backpack in the shop's back room. The boy did exactly what the lady asked. But in a fit of rage, he tosses everything aside without a second thought. Frustrated, the boy sighs as he realizes he just has to get moving. He remembers that before his dad passed, Dr. Yongguk was his father's best friend. She used to teach at a medical school, but when she ran into the Ong gang, she decided to take care of him anyway. Even though her food is delicious and the dishes are always made with care, none of the problems were her fault or the restaurant's. Suddenly, a thought breaks through his mind, reminding him of what that guy said on the phone. After all, anyone from the Cheongu group is worth 1,000 times more than the rest. So the boys send a message again. The guy asks for an update, and though nervous, the kid tells him everything and sends some pictures that prove his story. He said that Juch, a bodyguard for one of Cheon's security chiefs, was getting on with Miho, the leader of the ladies' gang. Though still terrified, he waited for the buyer to answer. The guy doesn't quite get what the boy wants with that, but he quickly remembers the important values they talked about earlier. The following day was a bright Saturday. A few men in suits walk up and ask if he is Gray. He nods to agree, but the moment he glances back, he knows he made a huge mistake. He punches him right in the stomach, knocks him out cold, and drags him into the van. As Gray is dragged away, he finally gets it. That's why they pay so much. In the end, it was just a trap waiting to be taken. The boy sat bound and tied in the security company's room. The leader admits he first thought he was just a pesky informant, but he realizes the kid is actually pretty good. He wonders where those pictures came from, and if his father had hidden them away before passing. The guy wonders if the brat is Jingu's son, one of the ones who told on Cheongu. Gray gives a small smile, takes off his watch, and the guy asks if that makes him think it's funny. With that, he punches the boy in the face and asks if that counts as funny too. The man keeps winning and asks if he has more files like that. The boy felt his pain grow as he was thrown to the ground and met with a relentless stream of curses. Even so, Gray couldn't stop himself from laughing and kept chuckling. Still chuckling, he called the old man a piece of trash good enough for a toilet, adding that if he had more, he'd have already sold him. The big man orders his men to grab the heavy hammer. The guy threatens to pull out all the boy's teeth until he finally gets it. This isn't a game. Luckily, one of the security guards notices the old man and shouts out to him. His underling warns that HQ is called to say they need to guard the emergency meeting. He stood up and declared, "If this is our top priority, then we move right now." So he tells them to stuff the boy's mouth and throw him into the room. The fat man shoved his way inside, then told the others he'd come back later to finish the job. Inside, an old man and a woman sat on the floor while he called his father a fool. Driven by a silly need for fairness, he didn't even bother to clear Chonga's name and instead died in a car crash alongside his mother. He should have just gone into hiding to live quietly while still doing work for them. Even if his father knew everything, it meant nothing if he couldn't protect himself. Soon, they can hear the security guards shouting about who that person was. And then, gunshots and screams start mixing together. Even the leader was so desperate that he commanded his men to kill the man. Fear spread through everyone as they stared at the chaos, unsure of what was going on. Suddenly, a big door swings open right before them. He hands them a knife and urges them to use it to free themselves and get out. Afterward, he made sure that none of the three noticed him there. Neither of them really gets what just went down. As they start to go, saying thank you, the boy glances back one last time at the fallen ones and wonders if that guy did it all by himself. After a while, he finally made it back home. Young Suk can't believe it, asking what happened to his face and where he went while he was away. She grows more furious with each passing moment, demanding that the boy speak. Yet Gray remains silent and insists nothing occurred. She smiled and told her not to worry. The boy walks over to his room. She watches him with worry deep in her eyes. The moment he steps into his room, he tumbles straight onto the floor. Still startled, the boy wonders if the own gang sent that guy there. After all, they had guns, yet he took them down with just 2 knives like he didn't even care. As the boy opens and closes his drawer while searching for something, he can't stop wondering if the man who arrived was sent by someone, secretly hoping for revenge. Remembering when the department head talked about his dad and asked if he had more files on Chongu, the boy admits that even if the info is huge, it's useless without the power to use it. As Gray tries to get into the files, he says he needs some power. That guy says it's nearly impossible to spot him in all those folders if you only know what he looks like. But then he suddenly remembers what a subordinate had warned him about. An emergency meeting was coming. That's when he recalls the top priority code activating Chongu's partnership. He realized he'd finally found it when he saw it sitting in his dad's folders. The rule said that if something big went wrong, the leaders would jump straight into a meeting at the Bug Mountain Annex. But despite having all those clues, they still didn't tell us exactly where to go. Giving up, Gray shrugs and says he doesn't care, especially since he doesn't even know that guy. Even so, he notes that just because someone thinks of Chongu, it doesn't mean Chonga thinks of them back. The police radio crackles with the news that Taiha's bloody rampage has already claimed multiple lives. No one knew how bad the damage was, but it was certain that Cheon executives had been meeting there in secret. As the boy stands up, he knows for sure it is that man. So he makes up his mind to ride his bike out into the dark night to get there. Even though he didn't know who that person was or why they were doing it, he decided to go anyway, and right then he saw someone hanging from helicopter. After hearing the gunshots and screams, The boy ran toward the spot where someone might have fallen. But when he saw him like that, he thought the man was dead, yet seeing the blade in his hand and hearing his plea for help, he noticed his face and declared that the fight wasn't over. Gray is blown away by how tough everyone is. After a while, he reaches his home and shouts for his adoptive mom. As always, she was working until a startled woman pointed at a stranger, and a desperate boy begged Young-suk to save him. As the days go by, the protagonist feels stronger, but keeps wondering who he really is and why he went out of his way to save someone. Gray stepped forward, introducing himself as a buyer and seller of secrets, and explained that lately he's been hunting for something special, hoping finally to find someone just like him. Skeptical of what he heard, the hero wonders if someone like him could really be a data broker. The boy keeps insisting he is simply a top-tier information wholesaler who always delivers the best secrets to his clients. And besides selling to other information traders, he also works with Guido's financial side. He tells how he almost died after falling in a Changu's trap, thinking he was about to meet a friend. Taiho wonders if the boy is one of the captives from that day, asking if he could pick him out even though she only saw him once. Gray nods with a grin, saying he wants to take home the prize for being the youngest data broker around. At that moment, the protagonist starts scanning the room, taking in the gear the boy had with him. Afterward, he asks how many days the boy has been there, and the boy replies that 4 days have already gone by. The man asks himself if he truly slept for so long. But he calls Gray and asks if such a broker could find him someone. But the boy had to admit he was bluffing, saying it was hard to even find Taiha and that he'd need another broker to help out. He needs plenty of cash to find the person he saved, and he wants to ask for something in return since he spent so much money on their medical bills. The protagonist ignores everything else and asks the boy if he's just saying he can't find the person. Gray wonders what the guy would do if he couldn't do it, but Taiha just turns his back and says it's all good. He grabs his jacket, thanks his helper, and promises to pay him back once everything is fixed. The boy wonders if he's really going just like that, but the protagonist insists he still has things to finish before he can go. He gives the boy one last warning. Don't try to stop him, because this trouble will not end with just one kidnap. Scared, Gray just sits back down in his chair, but he soon cracks a smile, noting that apparently that's just how things work. Once Taiha steps out of the boy's room, the thick smell of cooking pork hits her, making her wonder if this place is a restaurant. Taiha was shocked when Yangguk told the boy to stop standing on his feet. She tells him that while the small bullets allowed him to be stitched up, his broken bones must stay still or he will die even with the doctor's help. With a polite thank you, the protagonist tells her she must be the doctor who saved him and promises to pay her back. She says she's just the owner of a GBAP restaurant, not a doctor, and tells him to stay away if his stitches start coming apart. So the hero steps outside. He looks around, wondering if he has stumbled into a bustling market. Taiha ignores the distractions and reaches out to grab his cell phone. He answers the call only to say it's not his phone. Gray tells him his car is broken, so until it's fixed, he can keep this one. He tells the protagonist to grab the earphones from the box tucked in his pocket and give them a try. Taiha reaches out and grabs the device, only to gasp when he realizes just how big it really is. The kid shows how to connect the battery and mic, then warns that the first button on his shirt is actually camera. The main character insists he made it perfectly clear that the boy will die if he gets involved with him. But to his surprise, the boy asks why he's wiping out the Changa family. The boy tells him not to be shocked because even in a chaotic Korea, something that big would surely be noticed. While he was unconscious, the whole country descended into chaos after news broke that the entire Chianu family had been killed by terrorists. Taiha wonders why he'd want a favor, but the boy explains that in their neighborhood, powerful people named Ong and Changu are fighting hard to control land development. With two gangs closing in and many other troubles making life hard, things are getting tough. Even though his own trouble is pressing, he decides to help because he needs a favor returned someday. They can't let go of each other until it's all settled, but if Taha says no, he warns that he'll have to hand him over to the Chayangu. It is clear that the man absolutely hates this. Still, he says he's curious to see what this brat is made of. After a while, he walked into a busy part of town toward a fancy building. Taiha went to a special bank where he kept a very unique safe. With that, he reaches into a drawer looking for what he needs. Gray admits he didn't know such a company existed in Seoul and wonders if they could be tracked by it. The hero says those companies run on trust, so they would never do business with anyone else. He says that people usually go there to hide their jewelry or their sins, making it the safest place possible. Seeing this, the boy realizes the man is clearly ready to hide his true face. He starts thinking deeply as he watches what Taiha does. He couldn't figure it out because the killer had no guns and a knife just wasn't enough. Sweat starts dripping down onto the floor. As his body grew heavier, his face lost its calm, and sharp pain, like a stabbing knife, began to tear through him. He felt the sting, just like when Regina used to hit him. The main character wonders if the boy has finally found the man he was looking for. He asks if the Night and Pill CEO is the broker who got him into Korea. It seems he worked in Europe, gained a reputation, and is now secretly hunting for a ship to sail to China. Gray says the pressure on the border got worse after that man did something terrible to the Chayanga family. The protagonist tells the boy to shout to the traders that there's a ship for sale at 10 times the normal price. His friend asks what he plans to do when he finds that guy, wondering if Taiha wants to come along with him. He slid his knives into their sheaths and told him he was about to kill him. That day he nearly died because someone leaked his location, and Piljung was the only one who knew where to find him. With a cold voice, the protagonist declares that traitors must die. Later, inside the church, he confesses that he doesn't care if the person he's talking to is an old friend or a stranger. A shadowy figure with a hood pulled over their head steps into the chapel. As he walks up to the confessional booth, the man shouts for the priest and asks if they can have a word. He speaks a special phrase, and everyone brings water to their own mill. Pil-young grumbles that the holy place feels so stuffy and asks why they are meeting there at all. He insists that, even though he doesn't seem like it, he is truly a faithful Catholic. The fake priest doesn't care about anything else but asking where the money is, so the informant reaches into his bag to look for it. He showed the 100 million, but said it was smarter to swap it for just $10,000. Changing the topic, Piljung admits he needs to ask a question, but he can't trust the priest because that country is full of liars just like him. Gray warns that a lot of men are waiting outside. All of a sudden, a bunch of folks burst in, each gripping a sharp weapon ready to strike. The madman says it's weird that someone could grab a ship that even he, a master of information, couldn't find. They say that in that line of work, if you tell a lie, you pay for it with your life. He admits that the hero has to get ready to deal with what happens next. Taiha is shocked that the guy can't recognize his own friend's voice. Piljong can't believe his ears because they told him they killed him. He quickly saw there was no use trying to say anything. Even though he admits he was a fool for not suspecting the password was an Italian phrase, his friend explains that he lost everything to gambling, ended up in Korea, and is now drowning in massive debts at the Changga casinos. As Pil-young grabs his weapon, he tries to tell the other man that he wouldn't have said a word if he'd known they were trying to kill him. But before he could finish speaking, Taiha pushes through the confessional wall and stabs him in the throat. As he tries to stop the blood gushing from his neck, hope slips away and he sinks into despair. The men standing outside wonder what all the commotion is about. Through the camera peeking out of a button on the protagonist's shirt, Gray could see the man's body covered in all the spreading blood. Gray was absolutely terrified, knowing Taiha would keep fighting even with injuries that would make most people barely able to walk. As the protagonist stepped away from the booth, he noted that Pil-young had clearly ordered them to leave their guns at home just to keep the peace. The psychopath asks everyone to pray and tell God they are about to join him, saying it doesn't matter if they work for him or for his friend. Gray didn't know what to do, but the protagonist told him that seeing them armed with clubs and knives was enough to make him feel his life was in danger. So there's no reason at all for him to hold back. People wonder how that guy manages to get things done with a broken arm. One of them sprints to hit it, claiming they found money hiding inside the confessional. The hero gets ready to beat them. The boy admits the assassin's broken arm is just the start, as he's also got cracked ribs and bullet holes. He moves with grace to slip past the strike. Then in one quick twist, he drives his blade deep into the back of his foe's neck. Without waiting, he slips past the next strike and slashes the man's throat right as he moves in. In a flash, he hurls the dagger straight into the neck of another person. One of them dashes forward with a knife to stab him, but John Wick uses his sling to freeze the enemy in place. He quickly brings up his other arm and lands a sharp elbow strike. With that, Taiha wiped out every challenger in a single heartbeat. He says that once someone gets a head start, it's nearly impossible for their rivals to stay on track. With so much cash right in front of them, they knew their adrenaline was about to take over. Still, there was another one among them. One guy held on to something he wasn't supposed to, and suddenly a bunch of the others lunged right at him. The hero just takes a step forward and vanishes right in front of everyone's eyes. Using his incredible speed, he dashes through the crowd to take out whoever was about to cause him the most harm. The two who rushed in to attack him froze, utterly confused. Even Gray has no idea what just happened. And with that, the gun hits the floor as he rushes forward. He calmly turned to the remaining men and asked who was next, while the church stayed peaceful inside, even as chaos raged outside, with just one car parked in the lot at that hour. Gray stood inside, stunned and unable to believe what he had just witnessed. He thought the man wasn't really human because even with a broken body, he kept moving. Suddenly, Taiha shouts for the boy and checks to see if he is paying attention. The protagonist tells the boy to go to the confessional and grab the money, since he is too weak to do it himself. The brat asks in fear what he means, but the guy replies that he knows they are right in the area. He had already warned him about those men before they showed up. Gray stands frozen with no words to say in that moment. Even though he feels a little scared, he just takes on the mission. So the kid jumps out of the car and runs to the church, reaching right up for the door. He opens the doors with a little hesitation. Right before him, the church floor was soaked in blood and covered with dead bodies. The hero sat on one of the wooden benches. He shouts from above that he's right there in the sky. Gray gets so nervous he starts walking. When he got to the booth, he saw the body of his ex-friend lying there. He feels sick to his stomach because there are bodies scattered everywhere. The boy tells us he called a taxi and warns that it should be here in just 10 minutes. But when the boy looks at Taiha, he sees his friend is in terrible shape. He asks what's wrong with the man, promising to call Yong Suk to get some medicine for them. But the madman drives his knife right into his phone. Suddenly, Gray stops dead in his tracks, frozen by sheer terror. Taking off his glove, the protagonist mentioned that when he woke up, his clothes and phone had been swapped out. The craziest part? His gloves were still on. The boy just listened quietly, saying not a word. On Taiha's hand, the Salerno family mark was traced. The guy looks at the boy and says he knows exactly who he is up against. Gray just nods, remembering his name, his dad's name, and that he's the grandson of the late chairman of the Chianga Group. He is the lone Asian face in the Italian Salerno Mafia, a dangerous man between 20 and 30 with a staggering $5.5 billion bounty on his head. The boy insists he had no bad plans, even against the lady, and says he's just asking for her help. Taiha wonders if the reward is worth dying for, or if the price on his head is a better bargain. Gray tries to explain that they're hiding from Changgu, but the protagonist cuts him off. He figures that sending the boy to Changgu is the smartest move, so there's no point in all this trouble. He remembered the kid's earlier dream of becoming the youngest broker to win an award, but realized the reason his career has stalled despite his willingness to take bold risks is simply that he lacks the experience that makes older agents the ones in charge. With that, he asks Gray if he's ready to step into a much bigger arena. A short while later, inside a big modern building, two people walk down the hallways while one whispered a warning to the other. Only answer exactly what I ask you, nothing else. Hai gets so mad that he promises never to say anything that would hurt Ong's chances. His friend notes that the gang members aren't exactly known for speaking their minds clearly. Even though he's annoyed, he can't really fight back. The two step inside as the man apologizes for making someone wait. Back in the chapel, Taiha tells the boy he will honor his request and adds that they would be glad to keep working side by side. He warns Gray that taking this path means walking a dangerous line where a capture would lead to a painful end, but insists that if they join forces, they can rise to become the best. The protagonist says, "This is my promise." In the end, he will finally smash Changgu for good. The Own gang leader admits he didn't expect them to call so soon, knowing Chang was busy with his family's funerals, but the man raised his hand to silence them after saying they weren't going anywhere until he spoke up. Fear grips both of them as they wait to see what happens next. The quirky guy gives a tiny hand sign to tell everyone to keep quiet. With that, he starts bobbing his head to the beat. A speaker starts humming a tune. He throws up his hand in a tight fist, showing he won't give in. The two guys from the Own gang still don't get what it all means. But then, someone starts to clap. The man walking with Hume sighs, saying it's a real pity they showed up right as the performance was finishing up. Chong asked if anyone knows the song. The man named the tune exactly but said it sounded broken, thinking maybe his own playing caused it. This plainly fails to make the madman feel any better. He tells his bodyguard to switch it off. As Jian lifts her ear, the guy admits that 6th grade piano competition was the last time he practiced. And everyone who went to watch his show that day is now gone. The man asks if they know what happened, pointing out that if they'd known who was coming, they wouldn't have been so helpless. Hewan insists he warned him to cancel the meeting, because the assassin they were expecting was no ordinary threat. Chang insists he ignored the warnings and tells the man to put out his cigarette, claiming the guy actually knew the most. It makes him visibly angry. Chang insists that this traditional family emergency meeting cannot be canceled on a whim, explaining that's why he paid him $200 million to handle the man quietly without alerting the others. The guy rests his knee against a stick that looks like a cane. As he touched his leg, he admitted that instead of fixing the assassin, they took heavy losses, and now he was forced to use that strange thing. With that, the man admits he can't help but wonder how Juan is still breathing when all the other guards have already fallen. He insists he already told them that the assassin follows his own rules and didn't break them. With a grin, the madman suggests that maybe a terrorist's best rule is to never shoot a friend. This really angers the women, So he tells the guy to stop shouting those words and asks if they honestly think he would ever put his family's honor at risk. Chang says it must feel great to have parents standing by you, especially since his own are already 6 feet under. Suddenly, the other own member slid his glasses up, ready to step in. The man demanded to know who looked after the terrorist. He acts like there's no doubt whatsoever, insisting it was Mr. Junu. She gives the old man another suspicious look. Juan's partner turns straight to the bodyguard and asked him. The old man gives his word right away. But even the guy is still keeping his guard up and seems suspicious. He says he gets it and asks what Xiang want from them. The crazy man says he doesn't care about money. He just wants them to keep quiet about what happened. And if anyone asks, Quim Min will claim he has never seen that killer before. The guy can't figure out why Changgu is trying to sweep the whole thing under the rug. His friend flicks on a cigarette and asks if that's all you need. Chong begs him to blow out the cigarette, but Jun Soo just places a hand on his shoulder. Startled, the guy turns to his security guard, who steps in to reassure them both that this will be enough. The own rep says he needs a moment to think it all over and asks if the bodyguard wants a cigarette too. But the old man smiles, thanks him, and admits he's finally free from his habit. Chang loses his temper and smashes the table. He wonders why they aren't scared, especially since he's about to become president and can't understand what that old man is doing. The guy unleashes a barrage of insults and tells that little piece of Saul's to put himself in his place. Standing up, he explains that he's there because his boss would say so. As the man turned to leave, he looked straight at the bodyguard and said, "We've made a deal." He tossed the cigarette, but on the floor, and told them to bring an ashtray next time, with a wet napkin if they could. So the three of them stayed in the room, wrapped in a silence so loud it felt deafening. Chong stands silent for a few seconds, saying nothing and doing nothing. Juan claims he's truly amazing because he shut down all of Chang's arrogance using only his words. He pushes his glasses up his nose and explains that's his job there, since Cha Yong clearly doesn't get how things work. He said the old president taught him nothing and deserved his fate for not taking care of that troublemaker sooner. The guy looks totally shocked and asks if he really means that. The older man stayed calm and said that Chang probably planned a coup to take over as president. The elevator doors slide open and they keep moving, insisting they must find the assassin who attacked the Chayanga group right now. Juan insists the man is dead, but his friend quickly stops him from believing it. Even though Jun Soo is mighty, he refuses to take a life. The moment he asked the old man and got the answer he feared, the guy was even more blown away by the whole twist. He says it's doubtful Chang hired the man because Junu lost so many of his own soldiers. The killer stayed in the shadows until the very last moment. Juan recalls that when he first met the terrorist, the man claimed he hadn't visited Korea in ages and suggested they try to turn him, maybe even using him to take down Changgu. Even though the man thinks that's a good idea, if he does find him, he says he just has to kill him. He couldn't figure out why things happened the way they did before. Yet the old man admits the only thing that truly bugs him is that Chang called him, convinced him and couldn't stand a chance against the assassin. So the next time they meet, he's going to show them who's really in charge. Jappel says he isn't Oh-Sang's biggest fan, but he still can't stand seeing one of his men get beaten up. Back inside, as ice cubes tumble into the container, Chang shows that he has finally mastered one thing. After thanking his dad, he asks if either of them wants to guess. The coffee table lay broken on the floor, and the two bodyguards stood frozen in place. As he pours the whiskey, the guy claims he's really good at picking up on subtle messages. He said that when the old man asked if Taiha was truly dead, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. Chong sat on the sofa, claiming his bodyguard told him he killed his cousin, but Taiha suddenly jumped and hurt his leg. Plus, nobody has found his body yet. He lifts the glass to his lips, then pauses. He stares with a look of pure terror, desperate to know if Taiha is still alive. Junsu wonders if the man is saying he let the former young master get away, but the old man insists that he was the one who shot the boy out of the helicopter. Chang insists that if Junsu had done his job right, all of this wouldn't have been needed. The bodyguard confesses that the boy was tougher than he thought. Chang, furious, smashes his glass down hard on the counter. He says it's time to move on now. As he walks out of the room, he says his top priority is the board meeting because he needs to win their votes to join the committee. The psychopath tells the old man that he can't betray him no matter what happens to Taiha, and then asks President Jan Su if he agrees. The old man promises him that he always keeps his word and never goes back on it. They climbed up to the top floor of the building to the helicopter, where a group of young men were already waiting for them. Xiang is shocked that the guard is still alive. The man says what was promised didn't happen and asks him to think again about moving him. He insists he's been with the Chang'e family for so long that he couldn't possibly just jump ship to guard some random director. Fuming, he claims that if he'd known this would happen, he'd never have turned on his old boss. The madman steps forward and asks who told the guard to take a beating. Before he does anything else, Young Min takes a look at Yen. As she bowed her head, her boss snapped that he should be lucky he wasn't fired for doing such a terrible job. Still, he shouts out Jun Su's name. The old man tells him to stay calm for now and promises to get back in touch later. That's when a helicopter lifts off the ground and starts to rise into the air. The young men just watch them disappear. In a less organized part of the city, there is Sap Mrs. Young Suk's restaurant. Tai finally gets it. His late dad worked for the company, which is why Gray knew who he was. The boy explained that the tattoo on his hand and the hunt for the Asian man who caused the Kaeongu massacre finally made everything click, proving it wasn't so bad, and the protagonist agreed, saying it wasn't bad at all. His adoptive mom says he seems to have way too much free time. Young Suk insists that a Chung seeking revenge must have a plan in place, which makes Gray spit out his food when he hears the boy chatting instead of acting, and he even wonders if the lady would betray him just to see him distracted. While doing that, the psychopath convinces himself that traitors must die. His colleague tries to fix things, but the woman says that is just fair. She insists that a man who spent his whole life working for the mafia can never easily trust anyone else. But the hero explained he was just settling up some important things for an emergency. He tells the lady not to worry, saying that anyone hated by Changgu or Ong is not his enemy. So, Taiha returns to her meal and eats in peace. Both understand that the killer is probably warning them he'll protect them later if anyone ever crosses him. Suddenly, a group of tough guys burst into the restaurant, grumbling about how bad the weather is. He orders her to blast the air conditioning to its highest setting, warning her that if the customers leave, she won't have any money to cover her interest payments. Young Suk loudly states that she has paid everything and asks why everyone is making such a scene again. She tells Taeha to head back once he's done eating his lunch and taking a smoke, while also sending Gray off to school. Baksu tells her to give them some space, promising he has no intention of harming either of them. But he looks puzzled and annoyed by something he can't quite figure out. He said he'd never seen that boy there and wondered how anyone could end up eating in such a place. But then, the hero was shocked to see just how huge that radish kimchi actually was. The guy goes furious and yells, "Are you trying to choke on your food, kid?" As Gray stands up, he tells the lady that he's off to school. As he walks to the exit, he glances back to remember asking his co-worker to keep a promise before he ever did any favors for him. He begs Taha not to kill anyone or drive the neighbors apart. The protagonist wonders if the boy thinks he charges him blindly, but Gray laughs and says, "That is exactly what I did." He brings the conversation back to the main point and asks what he wants. His friend tells him that the 3rd district of Jiangxio is locked in a deadly standoff between Changgu and Ong. Just as a local gang named Yuburi was about to turn things into a chaotic mess, the battle suddenly stopped. But Taiha wonders if a tiny gang could really stop the fight between Changgu and Ong. Gray pats him on the back, telling him not to worry because Yuburi has promised everyone will stay safe. But they're also buying up buildings to form a housing cooperative so they can bargain for their future. The protagonist realized that Gray clearly didn't agree with that. He points out that since the mayor won with Ong's help, they would have struck a deal already if that were the real fix. Young Suk tried to speak to the boss, but he wouldn't listen, so he asked Taiha to talk for him instead. But he was forbidden from ever killing or seriously hurting anyone. The main character admits they're just ordinary thugs, yet somehow they've scared the big crime bosses into submission. He rises to his feet and gives the lady a thank you. Boku, annoyed and demanding to know if he's being ignored, tries to march past the brat, but Young Suk steps right in front of him to block the way. She told him to stop touching her customers because she's already been paid and asked why the ugly one is even there. The guy raises his hand to slap her, asking who she's talking about when she calls her face rotten. But Taiha catches the slap midair by holding up a bowl. So, before Gray could even step away from the shop, the 3 thugs were blasted right through the door. The main character steps out and follows right after them. The boy couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the madman finish all of that in less than 10 seconds. Shaking with fear on the ground, Bu yells at the kid to tell him if he even knows who he is. As the guy walks toward the men, he knows his revenge plan has 30 big parts, but he still isn't sure if some details will work out. In the end, he realized his real foe was Cha Yong, which he sees as a failure, yet he can already guess what Cha Yong plans for the future. Even though he carries the Jin family name, the board of directors must still vote him in as president. So he plans to use the growing trouble in the Jano district to shake up the board and force the runaways to lead him straight to their boss. As people whisper that the boy is crazy, a girl across the street stops to ask who he really is. Suri asks if he's willing to take on her whole gang all by himself. Taiha shakes her head calmly, lights up a cigarette, and tells him he's just there to talk. Suri shakes her head in disbelief, saying that while his men lie dead on the ground, His words sound like a lie she cannot believe. But the hero just stares at them, knowing exactly what's going on. The boy apologizes, saying that since they don't seem interested in listening to him, he doesn't want to talk to people like that either. Taiha looked up and saw that this was how they kept both sides in balance. He sees armed men everywhere and knows that if they take the whole city, the 3rd district of Yeung will become their headquarters. If one of them was a former officer, they surely have a very efficient system. And the girl wonders if this is how Korea protects itself while listening to his final words, telling him to be brief and calling him a scoundrel from Ong or Changgu. This really makes the madman furious. But before he could even take one step, a bullet slammed into the ground right in front of him. Siri tells him to say where he came from or face being full of holes. The girl insists it's best for the brat to move fast. But this only makes the assassin even angrier. With a tight fist, he insists that this day was always coming. Yet he can't believe how terribly rotten it has turned out. Her guards shout that it's too risky and ask if they should just kill him. She quickly shouts out Huri Yang's name. Her subordinate leaps from the building's peak and lands right in front of you. The man was so big, they called him a tank. The crazy man just stands there, eyes locked on the kid. But much to everyone's surprise, Taiha just orders the guard to step out of the way. The man stood frozen in place, staring right at him. Yet, to everyone's surprise, he follows the protagonist's orders, leaving Suri bewildered as the guard acts strangely while his other men rush toward them. It was a shock when the assassin just calmly took the milkshake she was sipping. He tosses it aside and mutters that it's no surprise the girl never makes her plans work out. She stood there completely baffled, having no idea what had just occurred. He leans in close to whisper a secret in her ear while staring up at the building. She starts to feel lost and terrified as things take a sudden and scary turn. Turning away, the protagonist muttered that whatever choice lay ahead, it wasn't worth his time. The girl remained frozen while her men asked if they shouldn't chase him down.